in our present cultural moment, there's this thing called wokism that gets bandied around a lot, and it's one of those terms that some people think means nothing, and a lot of people think is the core issue concerning everything right now. It didn't come out of thin air. The ideology around it has been doing what it's done for decades, if not centuries, depending on how far you want to go back. I trace it down to progressivism at the end of the 19th century. This is not a historical podcast, although I do some history. My primary concern is with the tradition of Methodism and how it can recover from all the damage done to it over the last couple of centuries in Western society and in particular America. So one of the things I've known I need to do for a while is talk to people in other denominations about the ideology and beliefs that have wreaked havoc in Methodism, because the thing is that whether or not you want to call it progressivism, wokism, liberalism, this notion that we can and should do better than those in the past, that we know better, that we're climbing towards a zenith in history, that we've started a new chapter with science and technology and modern things. All of that has been doing what it does, not just in Methodism, but in lots of different traditions around the West. And so I've talked some about non-Western traditions today that are rejecting, rebuking this. But I think I'm going to start a series. In fact, this might be the inaugural episode of this series where I'm consulting voices from other denominations talking about how it is that wokism, progressivism has operated in those spheres. And in particular, I want to hear the stories of how it is that these long-standing Protestant traditions got torn apart, but also how it is that right-leaning breakaways are also still fighting this battle, how hard it is to remain contained and keep that hostile ideology out. So to that end, my first guest today is Ryan Turnipseed. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. You are an interesting person. I'm going to let you speak for yourself, but I think interesting things for the audience to know. First off, you come from the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, which is the conservative faction of Lutheranism. I wouldn't say faction's not the right word, but it is a conservative, ostensibly denomination of Lutheranism. You work for the Mises Institute. You're only 20 years old.
Affiliated with them.
Okay, you're affiliated with them. Okay, so there are a lot of details around you. I know some of you've gotten in trouble for speaking with clarity about theological, ideological drift in the LCMS. We're going to refer to LCMS, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and then the UMC, which I have left the United Methodist Church. I'm now a global Methodist pastor, but my selfish interest is learning from other traditions to help my new tradition flourish and do well. So how about we start with a bio on you? Where do you come from, and then where are you going?
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go exactly. I was raised a Southern Baptist in north central Oklahoma because, as you and I are both aware, Oklahoma is a heavily Baptist territory. Mm-hmm. It's just the culture, I suppose. And that was what I was until about probably my sophomore year of high school, when my family and I became a Lutheran. Up until that point, up until high school, I was going to a Lutheran private school, but I was never a Lutheran during that entire period. I was still very much a Baptist during that whole upbringing. So became a Lutheran sophomore year of high school. My family did as well. My dad first, and then my mom. And we liked the theology behind it. We liked how everything was organized. Thought that it was definitely one of the more saner churches around. It was what we thought whenever we went into it. Had good pastors. So everything was looking very nice. Also, when I was in high school, I was coming across the sort of right-leaning libertarian sphere, which would be that Mises Institute connection that you talked about earlier. They print a lot of books. They have a lot of free books online that I was drawn to. So I was in both of those two things going through high school. Mm-hmm. And then just to skip ahead, not to dwell on that too much, earlier this year, in January, I believe it was the 21st of January, having been a Lutheran at that point for a few years.
And your father's an elder.
And my father became an elder,
okay.
Right? And my whole family was basically just heavily involved in the church. And I was in a group chat with a few friends. I was told that they were releasing a new annotated edition of Luther's Large Catechism, which for...
Yeah, explain to a non-Lutheran audience how big a deal this particular publication is.
So the thing that makes someone a Lutheran, at least in any real sense, other than like cultural, you'll see like Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, where they're basically having like Satanist rituals on the altar and all this other stuff. Don't really think they're Lutheran, just because they have the word in the name. So the thing that makes someone like really a Lutheran is that you subscribe to the Lutheran confessions. These were the documents describing the Lutheran or the Christian faith from this Lutheran perspective, dating back to the 1530s. I want to say was when the Augsburg Confessions were written. I don't remember when the Small Catechism was written, so I don't think that predates it, but I could be wrong on the history there.
Well, Martin Luther himself constructed the Small Catechism, didn't he?
Right. Yeah. So Luther wrote 2 catechisms that are in these Lutheran confessional documents. The things that make Lutherans Lutheran.
Yeah.
And the Large Catechism basically covers the exact same subjects as the Small Catechism that was written for children and new converts, illiterate peasants, and whatnot else. And it just goes through the same subjects, but with a lot more depth. So if you want to know what is the Lutheran teaching of baptism or communion or confession and absolution, it's the Large Catechism that has the most detail on those specific things for people.
And is that document amendable? Is that what happened? Did they amend it, or did they add a new commentary to it that was problematic?
Right. So officially, they did not change the text of it.
Okay.
I don't even think they retranslated it. We've had the same translation for a while now that's been perfectly good. It's just that they took 2 very loosely described resolutions that were passed at a convention a while ago, and they changed the meaning of them, basically, because it was 2 resolutions. One was like, we want the church to study more on how to apply itself to the modern world, which could mean anything.
Sure, yeah.
It's basically just a feel-good resolution. Obviously not quoting verbatim, but that's essentially what it amounted to. And then there was another resolution that said that the church needed new resources to bring people into the confessions more. Summarizing those 2 resolutions that you could go and find for yourself. I probably tweeted about it a few times back when this was the thing going on. And the church, the LCMS, took this to mean, well, we're going to take a copy of the Large Catechism and we're going to append about 600 pages of modern commentary and explanations to it.
You read these 600 pages?
So here's...
Oh my gosh, Ryan. Wow. And so you read all 600 pages, and then you issued this a response to it pretty much, right?
So, I can break that down, though, because it's not as giant of a feat as it sounds. So the whole thing was about 900 or so pages. 300 of that is just the Large Catechism that I had just gotten done reading like at the fall semester of last year. So that was fresh in my mind. 300 pages were the actual commentaries and descriptions and history and all this other stuff that was appended to it. Some of it was good. Like there was a bunch of stuff that's just like, here's the history of the Large Catechism in Europe. Like I didn't see much problem with it. I doubt anyone else would.
So wait, the LCMS got this mandate to have like a new hip way to make the Large Catechism accessible to the modern generation, and they issued a 900-page tome saying this will get the youngs.
I think officially, and this kind of just shows how much the mission just shifted over time. So they created that mandate, keep in mind. There was no mandate saying we want a modern Large Catechism.
Right.
They said, all right, we're going to make something with a modern application.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they ended up marketing it towards like seminarians and pastors and all this other stuff. But the way that Lutheran confessions work is that it's not just some secret documents kept in a safe for the ordained. It's for everyone. Yeah. So this book, 300 pages of the Large Catechism, just as normal. 300 pages were the actual essays and additions that were separate, but in the same binding. 300 pages were like footnotes and read more material, so that was easy to go through because it's like a page where it's just double-spaced. Citations, bibliographies, and whatever else. So in reality, I was reading 300 actual pages and then 300 more that's just like, you can look here for more.
Okay.
Wasn't as much as it's as
but even so, I mean, it's a big. You read through all of that and you digested it, and you saw a lot of signs of encroaching wokeness.
Yeah,
What were some things that you saw that, I mean, I didn't read your but what are some examples of things you saw that were indicative that this ideology was taking root in the LCMS hierarchy?
So I was in this group chat with these friends, and that's
Yeah.
how they got it to me. Is because it was released online as well as in copy.
Okay.
I did not get the print edition. I got the online edition, thanks to the charity of some of my friends. And they were looking through some of these things, and it was
Okay.
you could tell by the authors list if you had been keeping up with sort of the inside baseball of the LCMS that this was not a balanced authorship. It's not like they pulled from all sides of the church, conservative, liberal, moderate, whatever else. Like, we try to pretend we don't want to say that out loud, that there are these factions, but that's clearly what it is. It's almost like you have multiple synods inside this one Lutheran Church Missouri Synod that very obviously express themselves in different ways. Most of these authorships came from the left side. You had, just looking at the authors list without really getting into it just yet, you had one of the leaders for the Black Clergy Caucus, which is so very liberal in its theology that the guy was defending abortion, trying to make like not necessarily like a politically theological case for it. On top of all these other like DEI initiatives and whatever else they was trying to pass off as the true Christian doctrine.
DEI is diversity, equity,
and-
inclusion,
Right.
and this is a Trojan horse for a lot of neo-Marxist, redistributive, usually racialized lens interventions and institutions.
Right, heavily egalitarian, very non-Christian, just in however it's been used that I always keep seeing.
Well, so egalitarian, usually the ideology of egalitarianism is we're all exactly the same, exactly of equal
Right.
but you can, from a libertarian perspective, be an egalitarian just saying there should be no interventions whatsoever because everybody's of equal worth. DEI says there should be many interventions because people are not currently equitably distributed, so there has to be someone from above that says, you sit down, you stand up, you redistribute. So that's, DEI is tied to that whole redistributive intervention from the top down.
Right, and just to get a short lens so that you understand for the audience understands how it works. The libertarian perspective can be described as egalitarian from the point of view of who should we intervene with.
Sure.
Not necessarily is every single person exactly the same. Any sane person would say obviously not. At the very least, people are different heights, they have different weights, and all this other stuff that could.
Whether or not that has a qualitative property. Obviously, humans are different from one another.
Correct. Yes.
Whether or not you're using this better, worse language can be a big, but we are definitely different from one another.
Right, exactly.
But Christians would, I think, readily affirm all humans are equally inhabiting God's image. We are equal inhabitors of the imagers of God.
Yes. You're all going to be judged come Judgment Day. There's not going to be an exemption for anyone or even necessarily a worse sentence than what is deserved. The DEI types will not look at it as who do we intervene for. They look at it as all people need to be made equal, sort of like a Harrison Bergeron type of story where that's a Kurt Vonnegut short story.
Yeah, it's an excellent short story. A dystopian future where everybody has to be reduced to the worst state so that we're all equal. So there's an Ubermensch character who is given terrible glasses so he can barely see. He's wearing weights everywhere so that he can't move. So everybody is co-equal, and then it ends with him getting shot while flying around by a shotgun.
Right, exactly. It's literally...
It's an excellent story.
It's egalitarianism by handicapping everyone down to the lowest common denominator.
Very good, yes.
Which, that's where the DEI types are. People that might still call themselves egalitarians probably won't agree with that, but that's where these other people are coming from. So that was this one guy was an author, pushes all of the DEI initiatives and all this other stuff. I don't know if he's quite at the Harrison Bergeron levels of force everyone to be equal. But
no one on the progressive DEI is going to say we need to only push down so that we can all have equality. Usually they will. This notion of equity is we will help some a lot, help some a little, leave some alone, and actually hurt some others. And then a rising tide floats all boats is what they would say and believe, that we will reach this glorious future where we realize the kingdom all together through this intervention of church and state and other institutions. And then, as people like Jordan Peterson point out, is the only way to realistically make everyone equal is a nuclear apocalypse.
Right, exactly.
It's to tear everybody down. So there's this very nice sounding ideology that's taken root in the West and been around for 150 years at least. And then every time it tries to be implemented, it does result in not a rising of the tide, but a lowering of the tide. And we just refuse to learn from history.
Right. One might even say mass terror.
If we wanted to be, a little dramatic about it, sure. But you had a bunch of authors that are spouting this DEI stuff.
Like, that's one guy. There were a few other people that weren't even in the LCMS. They were in other Lutheran denominations, like the aforementioned Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. The very left-leaning one that, like, woke preacher clips will sometimes throw out there and say, look at this Lutheran pastor.
But you've seen a lot of stuff like this. I mean, this isn't really surprising or shocking to see at this point because, I mean, this is an ideology that's made its home in a lot of churches, including... Yeah, so let's put a pin in where we are in the history that we're in. We need to go back in time and learn about Missouri Synod. Yeah. Did it break away from ELCA? Did ELCA break away from them? How did things... I don't know this history, and I should.
So, I'll try to be as brief as possible because I can be very verbose on this topic.
All right. Good luck.
So, Lutheranism in America. America's a gigantic place, just to start off there. So whenever you have all these different Lutheran colonists coming over, they're not all going to, one, speak the same language, they're not from the same home country, and two, they're not going to necessarily be next to each other. So the very first Lutherans would be Swedes that were on the East Coast and the Swedish colonies there. First Speaker of the House was Lutheran. These people, I think, kind of turned into pietists is what they would be called now, eventually. So that's like one group. They don't really do much other than that early political influence. Obviously, the first Speaker of the House of Representatives is a pretty big title, but that's kind of what this first group is known for. Eventually, you're going to get German immigrants in the St. Louis area, New Bremen, I believe it was called. These would be coming from Silesia, Pomerania, Saxony, this sort of eastern, more conservative part of Germany that refused to go along with what was called the Prussian Union of Churches. The Prussian Union of Churches, just for people that don't know, very vulgar summary is that the king in Prussia wanted to commune with his wife. The king was a Calvinist, the wife was a Lutheran, so he issued an edict requiring that all Calvinist and Lutheran churches in Prussia form into one union with one united confession, or no, not united confession, because they could believe the different things, but they would have to commune each other and all this other stuff. That breaks Lutheran theology because communion in Lutheran theology declares that you have the same confession as those you're communing directly with. So these people that ended up in Missouri, formed the Missouri Synod eventually, were the sort of traditionalists that did not want to stay under that regime, so they came over here.
When was that?
I believe that they would have come over here in like the 1830s.
So Missouri Synod as an institution, as a unique unit, mid-19th century.
Early to mid-19th century.
Okay.
And people can find this more elsewhere, but this is just to get the history established.
And at that point, was their identity, we're standing against some cultural left-leaning force, or is it more just like we're standing for what we've always stood for?
It would be a combination of both, and that's due to the influence of the guy that would establish himself as the first president. He was a very much a hardcore conservative, so much so that he wrote against things like abolitionism and all this other things that he called secular humanism, fancy word for leftism at that point in time. So that's in Missouri. All the way up north in Wisconsin, you had a different group of Lutherans that would form what's called the Wisconsin Synod. These are still two separate organizations. They did not start that way because
are they still around, the Wisconsin Synod? Really? I've never heard of them.
They're considered the more conservative one because they don't let women vote still and all this other stuff. So
there's more conservative Lutherans than the Missouri Synod?
Far more.
I didn't know this.
So
are there any of them down here in Oklahoma?
Very few. Very, very few. I think there's like 2 Wisconsin churches in the whole state. And even then, it's just nominal. We can get into that. I don't know how much time we have. So
well, yeah, let me ask. So the Missouri Synod, you don't have female clergy, right?
Correct.
But females can vote in governing bodies?
Yes.
Okay. And then Wisconsin Synod, they don't even let women vote?
Correct.
Okay.
Which used to be the Missouri position until I think like the 60s or so. So it's not unfounded. It's not unknown. It's not like they did something crazy.
So then the ELCA, does that play on the same level as Missouri Synod? Wisconsin Synod, or is that a whole other thing?
So the ELCA was a merger. It was formed. So those were the two big conservative synods, Missouri and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
There were also other Lutheran churches, some of which formed as a result of those early Swedish Lutherans. There was the American Lutheran Church, which was much more liberal. They were one of the first ones to start ordaining women, for instance, and while staying Lutheran in its tradition and outlook. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod in the 70s, basically the liberals from the St. Louis Seminary left, all but I think 5 of them from the whole seminary, just vacated all the professors. They formed their own seminary in exile, which turned into its own minor synod in exile. So this breakaway, the American Lutheran Church and I think a couple of other bodies, more liberal-leaning, formed this Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
And that was around what time?
I think that would be the early 80s. I think
The
around
1980s.
that time.
Oh, okay.
Around that. It's a very recent body.
Yeah.
It's either the late 70s or the 80s, I want to say.
And so this is, the ELCA would be considered part of the mainline church tradition, not Missouri Synod.
Correct, yeah.
But Missouri Synod, you already made reference to the fact that there are factions within the Missouri Synod. It's not as though there's a monoculture that leans right. Rather, there are centrists and liberals within the Missouri Synod as well.
Yeah, if you want, so this is where we can actually distinguish the two now that I've threw them out there. The Wisconsin Synod is much more monocultural.
Is it?
Which means that it also has much less of a defense if it starts to lean leftward. The factions in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, as bad as they are for Christians to have, does mean you at least get a couple of good ones. So there are more conservative types of both low church and high church varieties. There are also more liberal types of both low church and high church varieties. So you get that sort of distinction,
right?
That's been around at the very least since the 2000s, because that breakaway faction in the 70s, the liberal types, they tended to be much more high church. They were much more historically minded, which is sort of the opposite of what it is today. Usually, if you're historically minded in high church, you'll get branded as a conservative or a crypto-Catholic or something, which is...
Yeah, so the areas of overlap you and I have is I am on the YouTube sphere, and I know a lot of history, but you're in the Twitter sphere much more than I am, and you know a lot of that lingo that I don't.
Right.
So crypto-Catholic would be some wannabe Catholic.
That's a really old charge going back to the Reformation, but that's basically if there was these... I'm sure you would...
Hidden crypto is hidden, right?
Yeah, crypto would be hidden or tendencies or something
so
like that.
So you're like a closeted Catholic.
That's what the accusation would be. It goes back to the Reformation.
If you're high church.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay,
that's a big holdover from the worship wars. So if you were saying we want the hymnal and organ, I mean, that's basically crypto-Catholicism. It's not like we've been doing that for 400 years at that point. You have to accept the synthesizer and whatever else.
The fog machine laser light show. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, get with the times, man.
Yeah, that's how it would be used, is that you would be accused of being a crypto-Catholic for being, 40 years traditionalist.
Man, my audience, I really feel for you guys. You're learning so many words and terms today. I just, if you need to hit the pause button, go take a shower. Okay, so let's come back to your story, because you're making your way through these new 300 pages of doctrine, much of which was authored by the left-leaning faction within the LCMS. You and your buddies were talking through this. You saw a number of signs of creeping wokism. What did you highlight?
Well, some of it wasn't so creeping. Some of it was explicit.
Just overt, okay.
Yeah. And once again, that's not to... a good chunk of these authors were not part of that left-wing faction. It's just there was a very underrepresentation of conservative types, and a massive overrepresentation of so we had the Black Clergy Caucus. Just very briefly, there's a group called Lutherans for Racial Justice. Should be a massive giveaway right in the name. They were authoring quite a few of the essays as well. So that's who you're working with, the massive sort of left-wing representation in the authorship, including a pastor from the ELCA. You had pastors from the North American Lutheran Church, getting a bit crazy, but these guys broke off from the ELCA, which is from that clip that we just watched, I would presume. If it's not from the clip we just watched, they are functionally identical.
Yeah.
They ordain women still. They're still sort of lefty, but they thought that ordaining homosexuals was a step too far, and so they split off.
From the ELCA. Right. Because the ELCA does ordain gay folk.
Yeah, they'll just ordain anyone at this point. So, in fact, the more strange, the better. They get more news articles that way.
Yeah. Nadia Bowles-Weber, is she ELCA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, have you talked about that with your audience?
No,
Okay,
no,
all
I'm
right.
not going to do Nadia.
Okay.
She makes me feel like I got to take a shower, man.
Right. Yeah. Understandably so.
Well, we need to camp out for a second because the racial justice and the Black Caucus, you're going over that as though an audience will know what to make of that.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not, and I don't presume to know your thoughts on. There is clearly an overlap between DEI stuff and racial stuff. That the belief that I have is just because you're Black or a non-white person does not mean that you are on board with DEI stuff, or that usually what happens in these institutions is that racial justice gets used as a cudgel for leftism. And so you have this notion that if you really are of this demographic, this POC demographic, if you really are Black, if you really are gay, you will hold a certain family of beliefs that lean left. And so they take token, I don't know if that's offensive to say, but token people of those demographics, throw money at them, organize them, and say, you represent all the Black people from this left. So you can kind of reliably in these different denominations. The exception would be in the United Methodist Church. Yes, you have a Black caucus group that largely leans left, and yes, you have a women's group, but you have an Asian group, an East Asian group full of Koreans. It's like, no, we're traditionalists, and don't use us for that. But generally speaking, when you do find, not just in the Methodists, not just with the Lutherans, but anywhere, when you mobilize a racial minority group to advocate for racial minority values, there's a heavy incentive structure towards leftism.
Yes, exactly. So when I say that the Black Clergy Caucus and Lutherans for Racial Justice are leftists, that's not because all Blacks or all anyone talking about race are leftists.
Right.
It's because that's how they've just demonstrated themselves to be through their own actions.
Okay.
That's we could spend hours on that.
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
So, but there are these different constituency groups that have authors that have written in this piece that are overtly proclaiming doctrine that is against traditional Lutheran understandings,
or even Christian understandings. So we can get into that.
Sure.
There were essays in there just titled like a Lutheran perspective on social justice.
There you go.
Which is a very big buzzword.
Sure.
That's a. There was a famous Austrian writer, F.A. Hayek. He wrote against social justice in the 1970s because he saw it as being so ubiquitous at that point in time. And basically his point was this is a leftist cudgel being used to say, if you don't come along with our cause of social justice, you don't care about people, you're a hateful bigot.
Yeah, if you don't do it our way, then you're a bigot.
And at the same time, attaching social to the word justice just completely sucks the meaning out of it. There is no justice in social justice, quite paradoxically. The Lutherans for Racial Justice, one of those guys, I think, wrote this essay. He went completely on board with this. Just as an example, and it's not like he was critiquing it or anything. He was basically arguing in this whole essay, how can we incorporate the modern doctrines of social justice into a Lutheran framework?
Yeah, just taking it for granted that has every's on board with that. Yeah.
Or should be on board with it, which is
if
even...
you're not, you're a bad person.
Yeah, so we had that in there. Quite famously, there was a paragraph in one of these social justice essays where the guy made the claim that gentrification is a sin.
Great, okay.
Which... And the way he was arguing that was that if you increase your neighbor's property value and you cause him to incur more of like a property tax or something, then you are robbing your neighbor because you've increased his property tax.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely insane to claim. And he would be making the exact opposite point if he was living in a neighborhood where there was zero gentrification and
white flight.
Yeah. So if that was in his neighborhood, he would be saying that leaving the neighborhood would be a sin and they should be gentrifying. So there's no win there.
You can't leave. You have to stay and stay poor.
Right, yeah.
But no more poorer than your neighbor, but no more richer than your neighbor. Okay.
So this whole cockamamie scheme is insane. There's no winning here. The whole thing is very clearly, just from that one contradiction, just a cudgel being used to say, go along with our narrative or else.
Yeah.
So that made it into these explanations.
Yeah.
Once again, the explanations are not the catechism. They were just appended in the same binding. But
it's official denominational published material.
Yes, they published it and reaffirmed it, which we can get to that in a second.
No, we gotta fast forward through
Okay,
this, man,
yeah,
because I'm much
got
more
it.
interested in what happened after this. So let me summarize. You published, was it just on Twitter or was it through Mises or
Twitter.
Okay, on Twitter you published a public criticism, naming how out of line this was, and then somehow the Twitterverse interfered with your real life, where they let your pastor know, and several elders in the LCMS created an orchestrated intervention where they used the tenor of lovingly caring for you because you had come under the sway of these far right. Did they use alt-right?
They used alt-right.
Okay,
that was,
alt-right Twitter thinkers. There was some kind of hit piece that was published about you by Antifa.
Yes.
That got into their hands, and then they confronted you. Man, and so, yeah, let me summarize just a little bit more.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love you is because you had the temerity and the clarity to know that you couldn't trust these guys, to know that they were under the sway of larger powers and principalities, and that they would, well, and apparently there's already some drama going on with some other people, and you can talk about that in a second because I'm interested in that. I'm interested in all of it. But you knew that you couldn't count on them to honestly report what they said to you. They created these environments where you were surrounded by hostile people, and you recorded that. And you have sound bites that you put out on Twitter to show the farce that this was. So one of the things, there are several things that you notice about how leftism works whenever it takes over institutions. One is it only punches right. It doesn't ever punch left.
Right.
It claims to be in the center. It only punches right. It never punches left. So in the midst of all this, you routinely said, are you correcting anyone on the left who is guilty of espousing problematic leftist views? And they're going, we're just talking about you right now, which is very convenient for them.
Right,
but
exactly.
Other stuff you'll find is they will gang up on you. And so all of a sudden you feel like you're the one taking crazy pills. You're the extreme one in the room. So what happened that I thought you not only shared what they said, but you and your father published several rebuttals talking about how
My father did.
Yeah, I don't remember what I said, brother.
But
Your
just
father.
as my father.
It's just your father. You didn't.
No.
Okay, so your father's defended you publicly as an elder, and then you've defended yourself on Twitter.
Well, eventually. So just to iron that whole story
Please
out just
do,
a little bit. So those things that I published, the critiques, there was I think like 7 or 18 of them.
17 or 18.
Yeah, and I was taking like screenshots of like 2 or 3 paragraphs highlighting the problems. It wasn't out of context by any stretch of the meaning. That got a lot of traction. The president,
when you say a lot of traction, it just got reposted on Twitter a lot?
It got a lot of views on Twitter, and it got a lot of people sharing it in real life. So people would show it to different pastors and all these other types. There was a giant letter writing campaign that started up as a result of it. And a bunch of other people were just commenting on it from like outside of Twitter, people that I had no way of connecting to. So there was some chain of communications here that just took off naturally.
So LCMS,
as of January, this article that I'm reading, it was the view count is not shown, but in the above embedded thing. But the count is currently 260,000 in January. So
yeah, that got pretty big.
Yeah,
I imagine there were a lot of headaches for LCMS higher ups.
Well, originally it sounded like yes, but the impression that I was given originally was that it was headaches directed towards the people that wrote these things and not towards me. So this is a big thing that happened. Originally I was given communications from the higher-ups that they were sort of like on side. They were saying you did good work and whatever else, and we're going to get this pulled.
You were getting attaboys, okay.
So it was a very favorable thing, and then finally on like the Monday after I post all this, I think I started January 21st was a Saturday afternoon. I think I published it. Monday they pulled it, and I was told ahead of time by people in the higher ups that they were going to pull this catechism.
Yeah.
Got congratulated. The guy still thought that I was anonymous because he couldn't believe that Turnipseed was a real name. So, it was a fun conversation. Everyone was sort of happy. They pulled this for about like 8 or 9 days, I think. And then at the beginning of February, the Synod president put the catechism and all of its commentaries back out. And not only did he do that, put it back out for publication, he said all of the online criticisms were wrong. They were taken out of context. They were hateful, and we affirm everything in this.
Who said this? Who was that?
This was the Synod president. So
That's
the guy
the
that leads the
number one.
denomination. Yeah, Matthew Harrison, who just got reelected by a margin of like 2%. So take for that what you will.
How old is he?
I don't know.
Where does he serve?
He would be in St. Louis.
Okay.
So, yeah, he put this back out there.
Okay.
And then, like, a couple weeks later, I think, because I was at dinner for my grandma's birthday, and my phone just started blowing up, and they're like, hey, you need to look at this, the classic cliche. And they were showing me this letter that had gone out from Matthew Harrison, this president, and it was this giant screed where he was calling for the excommunication of the alt-right. And normally I'd just be like, well, that's sort of stupid. No one's used the term alt-right seriously for like 5 years at this point.
Yeah.
Why would you resurrect that term?
Yeah.
And then I read through it, and he was saying that the origins of the catechism controversy stemmed from the alt-right.
And so at this point, so you and I are going to talk more off camera later, because I'm only sort of aware of a lot of these personalities and conversations that have been taking place over time. I know about Mobius Moldbug and
Mencius, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Not Mobius, Mencius Moldbug, and I've heard his real name. There are, so briefly, in American public life, people who claim to be right-leaning or conservative generally are still, when you look at the broad span of ideology, quite far left.
Yeah.
There is this actual thing called the right, which is very foreign to American public discourse, that has a number of ideas that are disturbing to many. When you listen to them, you realize there's some actual thought to it, there's some actual reasoning, however, it is threatening to the current social order. And so there's this catch-all term, alt-right, which we're made to interpret as just, these are Nazis, they're evil people, you can't listen to them, you can't legitimate their ideas.
It's a slur.
Whether or not that's true, that it leads to Nazism, what the result is there are people who will have these conversations, who will talk openly about them, that are instantly, if you talk to them, you are no good. If you platform them, on Twitter, as a young man interested in big ideas, have spoken publicly with people who speak publicly about these things, whether or not you've actually agreed with them. I don't know how public you've been about what particular beliefs you agree with that are considered not acceptable today, and we don't need to for right now.
Right, yeah. I mean, just for the record, I voice my disagreements all the time, so it's not like I've been showing the giving an impression of like unanimity in ideas or something. It's quite a insane accusation to say that I've just been fully sucked into the alt-right, which was one of the claims made against me.
So you have publicly, in dialogue with these guys, said, I think you're off base here.
Yeah.
I think, so you're not
Multiple times, yes.
Yeah, you're not some young man going, ooh, you're saying exciting, offensive things, and I'm going to sign on for this because I just love offending people. Right. You're going, no, I'll have a conversation with you. I understand. Here's what I can affirm. Here's areas I really disagree with. And so, yeah, in the recordings with those guys, you're going, wait, you're saying I have to disavow. Who do I have to disavow? What specific beliefs do I have to disavow? They didn't want to do that because they haven't listened to that stuff. They don't comprehend that stuff. They just know you entered into a world with people that they don't like, ideas that are not socially acceptable. LCMS has to stay out of that world. You're not clergy. You're just a layperson, but you're a layperson who publicly spoke about the institution, has dipped your toes into this world, and they cannot have that world anywhere close. So that's why the head of this group wrote this screed against the alt-right. It's to make clear you have committed the unpardonable sin of modern American public life.
Right, exactly. You've gone too far to the right, and I'll be very quick here just to blitz through this.
Please.
To make your point about how far to the left even so-called conservatives today are.
Yeah.
If you can imagine such a time in the 1940s, the right wing was so non-interventionist in its policies that it didn't believe we should get involved in World War II. That would be an insanely right-wing position. Today, you would get fired immediately if you said that. That was where the right was in the U.S. just a few decades ago.
Yeah.
They were extremely socially conservative as well. They believed in obscenity laws and blasphemy laws and all these other things that we had before the Civil Rights Act. That's a insanely right-wing position today. Oh, you want to get rid of the Civil Rights Act? You're a racist, irredeemable bigot. But that's just that's where things were just a few decades ago. That's how far to the left even a lot of people are today. And then, so that letter was put out by the president of the LCMS.
Well, you can't say what you just said. I got to protect us from people going, these are two white guys having a racist conversation.
Right.
There are people on the right who make the case quite compellingly that legislation like the Civil Rights Act actually hurt ethnic minorities in this country. That to stand against the civil rights movement does not mean I don't care about blacks and they can go right. It's I do care about black folks and all people, and they do not thrive whenever you have this kind of intervention here. This is not two white guys sitting down going, we don't care about black people. This is two people that are trying to be thoughtful going, something's gone wrong in America for the last 150 years. We have a fundamental misunderstanding that comes down to anthropology and the role of the state. Mises Institute. This is not, if you watch this and you're just going, these guys are a couple of racists, I can't help you. That's not what I'm about. I don't think that's what you're about.
Not
so,
particularly.
but the thing here was that LCMS tried to make it out that you were friendly with these racist types.
So
go ahead now.
On that point about the Civil Rights Act and two white guys talking about it, if you want a prominent non-white talking about it, Thomas Sowell in his early research, in his early research was much more radical and hardline against integration.
Yeah.
So this is a black who saw firsthand, what a poor community can do to everyone in it. And he was against the Civil Rights Act basically from the get-go in his earliest research, arguing, Thomas Sowell, black American, arguing in favor of some of the Jim Crow laws because he was saying that the opposite is just going to hurt black families, which if you look in the modern day, it seems like he might have predicted something.
Oh, sure.
Because he was saying that all these initiatives that were brought about because of the Civil Rights Act, like the Great Society, were just going to dissolve fatherhood within the black community and even the white community. And both things came to pass.
Yeah.
So that's your non-white. If you think that we're just a bunch of racists, you can go and call him a racist and sort of break your internal logic.
Well, or like Larry Elder, the blackface of white supremacy.
Yeah,
so
right.
this is what ideology does. It makes it so you can't really hear.
Right.
You just have the virtue signaling to one side or the other, and then the caricatures that people gladly put you into. So
that's exactly right.
You were getting caricatured, and you were getting pigeonholed into this white racist framework that the president was using the musculature of the denomination to then leverage against you and silence any voices that might be sympathetic to you.
Right. And that completely breaks how the LCMS is organized, just so that people understand. We are congregationalist in our structure. The congregations are supposed to be the ones to determine if they should look into excommunicating someone, if they should excommunicate someone, and then they do it if they determine that that's the proper procedure. They work this out on that level. To have the president issue an announcement saying, get these guys, that's an insane power grab that he shouldn't have been able to do.
That's executive overreach.
Exactly. If you want to put it that way, yes, that's exactly what it is. So,
how common is excommunication in the Lutheran tradition?
I mean, I asked some of the older guys that I know because I could potentially be facing that. And they said they could probably count on their hand in like their decades of being in the LCMS the times that someone had even tried to have been excommunicated. So,
and is that when they enter this formal process, how often is that against a lay person versus clergy? Do you know?
I do not know. I think usually it's just typically the only times that a congregation has excommunicated someone has been because they've done something obscene.
Yeah.
They tried to justify it and they refused to back down. Everyone thinks that they're absolutely insane. They have like no supporters. They've tried every last option available to them. They keep trying to get them to show up to church.
Yeah.
And then finally they say, all right, we can't say that you're still a Lutheran or even really a Christian. We want to help you, but we can't do that, so we're excommunicating you.
Yeah.
Not quite what's been happening here.
Well, they've been trying to. So, who was I talking to? Oh, there was a guy in East Ohio. They wanted to kick him and his congregation out of a church building and absorb it into the East Ohio Annual Conference. So what they did was they created this phony Conversations at the Cross process where they created a paper trail that made it look like they just weren't cooperating. They just weren't doing anything.
Right.
And this is one of the things that institutions do rather than just overtly behave as autocrats. They create a phony system where they can say, well, we tried to work with you. We tried to correct you. And you hear them doing that with you in these recordings of, we're just trying to take care of you. We're just trying to minister to you. So they're making you sound like this problem person. And where if you defend yourself at all, if you're saying, can you tell me where you got these resources? Can you tell me any specifics of what you're alleging against me? Can you tell me the specifics of what you want from me? All of that is seen as he's being defensive. He's really, he's just not responding well to church discipline, so that eventually they can say, we need to wash our hands of you. We tried, Ryan.
Right. So, and that's exactly how it's been sort of perverted to be used here. So after that letter was put out by the president, getting to those recordings very quickly.
Yeah, please.
2 weeks, a couple of weeks, a few days, I don't remember the time frame, very quickly after, just completely coincidentally, an Antifa front pops up from the ground, completely new. It's called Macabre Action. Actual Antifa. They're publishing on a website that's only used by Antifa.
Are they geographically based?
I don't know. I don't know that we even know. I just know that they're on No Blogs, the sort of domain that they're using, that is explicitly Antifa. That's not like that's just where they congregate or something. That's only Antifa. These guys spring up out of nowhere. A bunch of Lutheran pastors in this conservative synod were following them from the get-go, and their first article was a hit piece against a few people, including me. And they got a few facts wrong. Their allegations against me and everyone else was that we were all fascists trying to take over the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and we were white supremacists, we were false Christians, we need to get rid of them or else, Hitler #2 is going to come to power and the whole world's going to die. Basically what the whole article boils down to, it's absolutely hysterical. They get some of their facts wrong. Number one, my association with the Mises Institute, a very hardcore libertarian group, should show you I'm not really a fascist. I don't really buy into the everything within the state, nothing outside of it doctrine.
Yeah, so people don't know what fascism means nowadays because it's used as a slur for anything we don't like. But fascism, the metaphor of fascism was a bunch of sticks is not easily broken.
Right.
That you need everybody oriented, working together in the same direction. Right. The state's job is to congregate power, and there is nothing outside of the state.
Right.
Libertarianism is the opposite.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite.
It's so to say that you're a fascist is not definitionally accurate.
Right. Well, it's not. I don't even know what you'd say besides definitionally. It's just not accurate.
Yeah.
Like nothing that I do could be mistaken for fascism if you just looked at it and just parsed through it for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Even less than 5 minutes. If you just looked at it for 1 minute, like there's no way you can mistake me for a fascist if you're being honest, which might be the key here. Perhaps they aren't honest. Maybe Antifa is not an honest actor.
So you know how, like in the modern world, racism, the meaning of racism got inverted. It used to be that we need to be colorblind, that there is no reality to race. We're aiming at a colorblind future. Now racism is if you don't acknowledge differences in race, if you're not a racial essentialist to some degree, if you're not a redistributionist, then you're a racist. Right. So similarly, I think that's what's happened with fascism, where it started with a political ideology, but now you're a fascist if you're at all sympathetic to right-leaning understandings of state.
Right. And that's exactly how they meant it, obviously, but it's just to make that point there for the audience, because they're probably the only few people that would care. It's very clearly not true, and you can just... The doctrine of fascism, I think, is like 8 pages. It's like a 20-minute read. Okay. You can read that and compare it to literally anyone around today that's been called a fascist. Right. It's not going to fit for a single one of them.
No. A lot of definitions have been either inverted or just really gone from its moorings. So that's what makes talking today so difficult.
Right, exactly.
Is we try and use words that have meaning, but depending on who you talk to, those words have very different meaning or sometimes no meaning. So Glenn Lowry says... You know who Glenn Lowry is?
I believe so, yeah.
Conservative black thinker says that there are many words like alt-right or racist that really don't have to correspond with anything real. It's just, it's the modern day equivalent of calling someone a witch.
Right, exactly.
So you're a person I don't have to care about. I can demonize. I can demolish anything that you have to say. And so that's what's going on within the LCMS leadership with you. Has there been any kind of, in the above structure, has there been anyone who ranks up high that's been like, Turnipseed's fine, leave him alone?
I've heard people say that they've heard other people in that structure say that I've been fine, but, that's hearsay.
Okay.
I don't want to go promulgating rumors and all this other stuff.
So you only know what you know.
Right.
All right, dive into the larger story wherever you want.
Right. So, that Antifa front puts out one more very hilarious mess up that they did. And we'll get into why are we focusing on this Antifa document. We'll get there immediately after
Well,
this.
do you suspect that they're not actually Antifa? They're just like some Lutherans that are sympathetic to leftism? Or
I mean, they could be both. They're not mutually exclusive.
There might be
so
some Lutheran Antifa.
Yeah, that would not shock me.
I'm not aware of any United Methodist Antifa. The LCMS might be further left than the UMC in that way. That's crazy.
We'll get there in a second. We don't
Okay.
know the identities of this Antifa front, so I'm not going to
Okay.
speculate too far on it. They just they know a ton about Lutheranism, and they have the connections in order to get on this domain that's Antifa exclusive. So,
Okay, yeah.
they got one very key, hilarious point wrong. And this dossier of all these supposed Lutheran fascists, their last hit was against a guy that was not a Lutheran and was not a fascist. He was a Jewish Roman Catholic.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
Democrat
Say
from New
his
York
name.
City. His real name's like Robert something, but his online persona was Luthemplar at the time.
Yes.
So
That all sounded, that was so, when I read these documents, I just could not, at that point, I'm just like, this is so weird. But is he just one of these guys on Twitter that you would talk with sometimes?
yeah, I mean, I just met him for the first time last week.
In person?
So yeah, because
Okay.
I have my own history channel on YouTube. He'll donate money and all this other stuff. We have, obviously, by the fact he is a Democrat in New York City, he votes down ballot blue, and he's a Roman Catholic. We don't agree on too terribly much, but he's sane.
He's a good conversation
yeah,
partner.
yeah, he's sane. He won't call me a racist or all this other stuff. He has a lot of the same instincts that I and my friends might have. So he's not like, I won't say he's bad necessarily any worse than you could be voting for those candidates in New York City, but not quite a fascist.
No, that
by
doesn't
that
really fit
description.
in
No.
any way. But they lampooned him
Yeah,
anyway.
they lampooned him, but they believed it because they were trying to weave him into this grand narrative saying he's the propagandist of this secret fascist bloc. Which,
That's weird.
It's weird, but it's wrong. And it's so wrong that I don't think they were trying to just misrepresent him. I think they got it wrong. If you knew who he was, a Jewish Roman Catholic, votes
They
down
didn't know
ballot
these
blue.
things?
No, they didn't,
You don't
because they
think
didn't
know
mention
these?
it.
They just looked at who was funding you.
Right. You would have to. He only mentions those things in very niche places, very, very unknown places. So they would have to actually do detective work to find out that that was who he was.
Okay.
All they saw was his most public-facing stuff. He made a meme about Kanye whenever he was doing his sort of National Socialist stint. So he put like a German flag behind him as like a joke, and it took off. So they took that to mean this guy endorses fascism.
Okay.
Which is the largest leap in logic I've heard so far.
See, and this is where a lot of, I don't even know how much my audience is going to watch this because it's so far outside of the normal United Methodist. This
Right.
is a whole other world
Right.
to them. And it's a scary world where you're dealing in memes
Yep.
and fake names
Yep.
and code words.
Yep.
And you're navigating all of this.
Yeah.
But you're in the midst of would the LCMS be similar to the UMC in that it is very intimidated and scared by and doesn't want anything to do with this online world where there's different social rules and norms?
I would say it's irrefutable, and I left out this detail trying to buy time and all this other stuff. But whenever whenever those initial criticisms took off so successfully at the start, the reaction from most of the sort of liberal, moderate pastors was to just claim that I didn't exist. I'm not exaggerating, not being hyperbolic. That was their claim, was that an anonymous, unknown person named Ryan Turnipseed published these criticisms, and for some reason people are listening to them. How dare they? And upon being told, and this has been sort of a running joke now about my person, upon being told that I was actually real, I went to church regularly and all this other stuff, one of the pastors in, I think, New England, around there, moderate pastor, he said, well, someone just told us that this Ryan Turnipseed guy exists. What proof is there? So they were so caught off guard, I think you could say, that they just denied I existed and tried to hope the problem would go away if they just didn't acknowledge it. So
Yeah.
I think it's irrefutable to say it's an absolutely terrifying world for them, and they don't know how to navigate it.
Yeah.
So
And it is intimidating. Well, it's either you're completely indifferent. I mean, hypothetically, a person could exist representing a denomination, getting involved in denominational stuff that really is a cancer, you
Right.
know? But because they're being a cancer in a sphere that is very foreign to the institution, they could stay away, and this person could just really hurt the institution. So I understand why there has to be an institutional response.
Right.
But it is kind of shameful. They're willing to, I mean, it seems like they already came to the conclusion they wanted, which is shut him up, he's got to go, without really doing, because anywhere there's a threat, there's also a promise, there's also potential. So what if you or someone like you were able to effectively engage this whole online sphere in a way that mobilizes people for Christ? It has that potential, whether or not this particular issue points to that. But the fact that their response is immediately defensive and hostile says something about institutionalism.
Right. Well, and I and a few people have been doing that. It's pretty regular now that we'll get people, typically on the right, that'll say, I just went back to church for the first time in years because of you and all this other stuff, so thank you. So, like, that's a pretty regular message that I and a bunch of others will get. So it's not like we're just being, like, petty philosophers arguing online or something like ivory tower intellectual arguments. It's, we're actually... We do have people that will write in and say, "Hey, helped us out here, thank you." So it's a good thing that we've been doing, and it's part of why I just keep going, is because as long as I get that sort of as long as people are like positively going towards Christianity as a result of this, I'm not going to just stop it.
Sure.
Because an institution is threatened.
Yeah.
But that was one thing that happened early on.
Yeah.
So this Antifa article gets published, and then a few weeks later. This is where that whole story starts. My pastor sends an email to my dad. My dad finds out that all the other elders received a much more detailed email than he did. He shows up to the meeting anyways that he was told to recuse himself from. And they all agree unanimously that there should be sort of like a conversation with me to just find out what's happening.
Yeah.
So that's the mandate that they all voted on unanimously. That's what they were talking about. And eventually this conversation rolls around. It's in the middle of March. It's at night. I show up there expecting my pastor, the guy that's like above him in our hierarchy, and maybe one other guy that was in this sort of chat where I was told there would be a conversation, but I wasn't told what it was going to be about really. Show up there, and it's my pastor and the guy above him, and two completely separate people that I hadn't been told about at all that would be present until like half an hour beforehand. So off to a great start already. They're withholding information. What are we going to be talking about? I don't know. They changed who was going to be there at the last second and added in 4 people on the sort of questioning side and then me on the other side. So very sort of tense environment, if you will.
Yeah. It's designed to put you off, you're out of your comfort zone, feeling insecure. They have all the power. You have none. This is a thing, well, the United Methodist Church does it as well. I got called before my bishop, and he had 4 other people in the room.
Right.
I was surrounded. I was not allowed to have anyone friendly come be with me. It still worked out fine for me in that case, but for a lot of other people, the dynamics of such a setting are so overpowering that they're set up to fail.
Right, exactly. It's an intimidation tactic. That's what it is. So, so I go into this meeting, and I record it for one specific reason, and we talked about this at the beginning. I recorded all of these conversations that I had with these people because at another church in Oklahoma as well.
Oh, yes, I wanted to know about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't think I'm at liberty to divulge too much details, but it's a church in Oklahoma with an elder.
Yeah. You can't even tell me the church. I was going to follow up with the elder and see what he would tell me.
Well, I might be able to tell you after this, but
all right.
just for the public sphere right now.
I understand. Okay.
Church in Oklahoma, there's an elder who was forced to resign.
There was a confrontation in a parking lot that was recorded.
Okay, that's a different story.
By the bad guy. Oh, that's a different
story. So,
okay. I'm cleaning my brain.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy.
There's been a whole series of purges. It's a very confusing time.
Yeah, you're not the first person that's
I'm like
been
the
kicked.
3rd or 4th.
Okay.
So, and I haven't been kicked out yet. I've just been put one step beforehand. But we'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
So this relevant to the story, why I recorded these conversations. There was an elder in this other church in Oklahoma. And he showed up to this meeting that was supposed to be with him and a couple other guys, including his pastor. He showed up there, and it was the entire board of elders and the pastor. And they were basically pressuring him the whole time to resign because he had spoken to me and a couple of other people about this catechism stuff.
Oh, so this still has to do with you.
Yeah. So I think he was probably the second guy in this line of purges. So he resigned the elder position, and he assented at the beginning. His pastor said, "We're going to record this just in case." The guy said, "All right," thinking he would get a copy at the end.
Yeah.
So this thing ends. He resigned his position. He asks the pastor for a copy of the recording.
Yeah.
And the pastor just says, "No, I don't think we will." And that's where it ended.
Yeah.
So going into this, I'm going to record everything there
Yes.
because I'm not going to be caught without a recording if they have one as well.
And I have to camp out on this, and I've done it before, but this is one of those things. We live in the modern world where we have these recording. I left mine over there, but I've got a recording device right here. To have a recording device and not use it in any situation where it could turn into he said, she said, is just irresponsible at this point. If you don't know it, Oklahoma at least is a one-party consent state. It is legal. Any conversation that you are a part of, you can and you should record it if it can turn into he said, she said. If you are a leader in any capacity, you have no excuse. If you are being called in for disciplinary reasons, don't even trust, even if they say they'll give you a copy later, don't trust them. Have your own copy. I don't know many people other than you. I'm the only person in the United Methodist Church I know. I recorded my Board of Ordained Ministry meetings going back a decade. So many other people think they're just we're morally obligated to trust one another for some reason.
Right.
But if you have a correct anthropology, people are sinners.
Right.
If you have an understanding of how institutions work, they always work defensively and they crush the little guy. If you know what's good for you, you record. And then in your event, you did. This other guy, he got recorded, but they wouldn't give him the recording.
And that's why it was so shocking, is because we thought that this would be done in at least a shred of good faith, maybe a facade.
Yeah. No.
And he just got basically backhanded.
Yeah,
just no, you're not going to get a copy of this. So
there are people you'll do ministry with for decades that you think have honor.
Yeah.
That when these things come into play, none of that counts.
Very clearly. I would say more on this story because there's more on that line there,
sure
but
there is,
it would reveal the guy's identity.
understand.
That's what happened there, and I was just so in shock from it that I was like, well, it doesn't matter how much I trust these guys. If they can just do that, I have to record as well.
Right.
So this meeting was an absolute insane asylum because I show up. The guy asks, "Do you know why we're here?" And I said, "Well, the only thing you told me was it had something to do with my online dealings." That was all that I was told. And the pastor says, "We're concerned about your associations with this guy, and this guy." And those people that he mentions just so happen to line up perfectly with that Antifa article from earlier in the same
which
order.
you had seen, yeah.
Yeah. So strange coincidence, but we'll get there soon. So right now it's just circumstantial coincidences. Maybe a pattern's forming, but not quite yet.
Yeah.
And he just lists off names, and he says, I ask, "Okay, why do you want me to disassociate with them entirely?" He says, "Well, here's all the things that we think they've done wrong," and he reads out to me one-line paraphrases from things I just have to trust him that they pulled it from correct sources. Afterwards, I found out that some things were just fabricated, if not mistaken. So, I didn't put much faith in it to begin with, but that's just kind of what I was given. That was the only tangible. It was read out to me. That was the only factual thing I was given.
Yeah, they gave you nothing in print.
Right. Yeah, nothing at all. So I was given these one-line paraphrases of here's everything that's wrong with these people that we've read out. We need you to completely disassociate with them forever. And I ask, all right, is there anyone else you want me to disassociate with? And they mentioned that guy from the Antifa article, Lutheran.
Yeah.
So this says a few things. One, they are not doing their own research because, once again, just a cursory glance over the guy's life would show he's not a radical at all. In fact, he's much farther to the left than I am. Yeah. He's not a left-wing radical, so he's not in the other direction. He's a moderate leftist, if you will.
Yeah.
Very intelligent, very good to talk to, but he's not a fascist. It's an insane accusation. So, one, that's the source they're using. That's the only reason that they would bring his name in. So I immediately clicked for me there. That's the only reason that they would bring it up. So now I was sort of on the, not defensive, but I was I'm not treating this from that point on in the recordings as if it's a good faith discussion.
Yeah.
Because they aren't telling me what they're using.
Right.
They're thinking that I'm not going to notice them using the exact same lineup of this Antifa document and including the mistakes.
Yeah.
It's literally, you can tell if someone's copied homework or something because they'll have the exact same mistakes in the exact same way. That's what happened here.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a very interesting reveal there. And I eventually just asked, okay, what do you want me to go out? What position do you want me to denounce? And they say, no, we need you to fully disassociate with them. We need you to renounce their persons as evil, is the demand that was given to me. If you at home are wanting to know what on earth does that mean, renounce their persons as evil, I don't know to this day, and I don't think they did. So it's an undefined demand that was given to me.
I have to camp out for a second because I got called to the bishop's office here over remarks that a guest made on a recording that I did. And I think it was their thought that I would just up and quit. And it had a lot of these tactics. Bring your clergy credentials with you. Like he's going to take them from me, and then I'm surrounded by people. But it gets to, okay, what do you want from me? What should I do? And they're looking at each other like, what do we want from him? I said, okay, is there an apology? Yeah, there's an apology. Okay, written? Do you want me to say it? Well, both. And then, okay, who should I say it to? Do you want me to, well, okay, he should apologize to so-and-so, so-and-so. I said, okay, do you want me to go? I can go in the other room right now and talk to them. Do you want me to go from desk to desk and apologize to each one? And then they realize I'm kind of mocking them. And so, we go down this, and then it finally ends after, 5 minutes of this with them going, we'll tell you later what we want from you. You know, they're keeping, but it's one of these things where it's just like, man, y'all don't think these things through. Right. You're just counting on me to be so bowled over that I just cry and leave. Right. TJ's heard this recording. Did I recount that falsely at all?
No, it was exactly as you said it. It was kind of ridiculous. I'm listening to this and I'm like, wow, you guys just did not expect this at all.
So, I mean, this is one of the things that's so disheartening about institutions in America right now. They are not led by the smartest or most professional people. Yeah. They're led by unscrupulous, self-interested people. Correct. And that's something that you find across the board because people with any shred of righteousness have to leave because they can't stomach it. So what you're left with is a bunch of people who have their consciences seared and are not bothered by being lazy, by ruining someone's affiliation with their church body, speaking evil of them, and then to compel you to speak evil of others and disavow their persons. Was that the language?
Disavow their persons as evil, which is just a word salad. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, I mean, like, in what circumstances would they be okay with disavowing, like, gay theology as evil and persons who promote it as evil? Where's this line? Okay, who are the people that we're going to disavow and pronounce as evil and condemn? I mean, that's like, so we don't do that.
So this is like basically 2 hours of recordings, and not everything made the publication.
Right, okay.
But I did ask him eventually, like, who else have we done this for? Like, I can't...
Yeah, no, that's in the recording,
right, even if we condemn people, like, we never say their entire person is evil. That's insane.
Yeah,
like,
that's very dramatic.
Like, I kind of, like, I started poking fun at them a little bit. I was like, do you want me to also denounce the things that they get right? Like, do you want me to stop being a Lutheran because they also claim to be Lutheran? And they're like, they're like, no, obviously not. And I'm like, well, no, not obviously, because you haven't told me anything.
Right,
so they haven't. So if you remember back at the mandate that they were given at that meeting, they were supposed to just discuss with me what's going on, and I'm thrown immediately a ultimatum saying, do this or else. And
well, certainly that was actually the plan. They told you one thing, but then they did another.
Well, they didn't tell me. They told the elders, the people that unanimously voted for this. So all that I was told going into this from them was, we need to talk to you about your online stuff. They completely went past whatever mandate that they got, which should be expected, in hindsight especially. But it's definitely not the most trustworthy move, if you will. Yeah. And all these clips, you can find them. They're under my name on Twitter and probably a few other things at this point. I would love to go through with them, but I don't know how much time we have for that.
On the show notes, we will put a link to his Twitter handle, and then any other links you think are helpful, we'll put in the show notes. Okay. So if you want to get into this online world and all of the personalities and details, if you want to hear the recordings, he's got them all there. You can scroll down and see them.
There's tons of them. Like there might have been like 60 or so recordings by the end of it or so that I had on my
didn't listen to all 60. I listened to like
or 40,
7.
60, 50. I don't remember, but there's a lot.
Did you didn't put just one big recording up on the internet somewhere?
I mean, I would have loved to, but the main place that I can like show this to people, because
Get a Substack.
well, I do have a Substack, but we'll get into that in a second
all right.
afterwards.
Okay.
I don't directly have one, but so Twitter is my main audience.
Yeah.
And while I am doing this on principle because it's wrong, they shouldn't have done this, and that needs to be brought to light. There is also the bringing to light aspect. I need to make sure that people see this so that something can be done. Twitter is my main audience. Just throwing like 30 minutes of edited footage up on Twitter doesn't do well. And also it's not good for trying to pick out things. Did he say this here? So what I did is I put up clips of this thing was said between me and him and all this other stuff.
You were very diligent. Yeah.
And if I need to, I can release the full unedited footage to show that I didn't take things out of context at all. Everything's divided into clips by topic.
Yeah.
And like there was a bunch of very almost terrifying things that were shown to me or said to me. Like we were going in a back and forth once about what do you believe, and you're being associated with these people and whatnot else. And then the pastor goes silent. Everyone goes silent. There's just this thick air hanging over the room, and he says, "Do you want to be a member of this church?" And I was like, "Yeah." What do you mean by asking that? That's like a very aggressive question to just ask someone in something that's supposed to just be talking about a subject.
Yeah.
So I've already been thrown an ultimatum. I'm asked, "Do you want to be a member of this church?"
Yeah.
And then all this other stuff. By the end of it, there's a bunch more details in there. We could spend hours going through it. But by the end of it, they weren't happy at all. They were, in fact, quite annoyed and angry.
Oh, sure.
Because
if you don't give them what they want, they are petulant.
I stood my ground, quite frankly, because I didn't even see a shred of reason to go along with them. They didn't substantiate a single thing that they said the entire time they were there.
Yeah.
Nothing was proven. They just threw out demands
Out of
at me.
respect for them and the church, you showed up to the meeting.
Yeah.
You took them seriously, and to the point where they determined for you that they can't be taken seriously.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's like a few questions that may sound leading in these recordings, and they are. And it's me just trying to see how serious they are. So when I asked, are you going to do the same to Democrats or something like that, people that vote for abortion?
Yeah.
That's not me saying, but what about the left? That's me saying, are you doing this to everyone or just me? Like, that's me asking, how much can I trust you guys?
Yeah.
And they completely flubbed the question, and they said, we're only focusing on you.
Right, yeah.
They gave me a direct answer in what I was looking for. So there is the aspect of they are ignoring the left, and they were just conveniently trying to focus on me.
Yeah. Is this a principled approach, or is this a personally
purge.
driven?
Yeah.
So, and you established this is a personal ideological purge. It's not a principled response.
While it may sound like we're just focusing on you, it may sound like they're trying to bypass the question. They answered yes or no to that question I was really asking, and they gave me a hard yes, we're just focusing on you.
Yeah.
Don't care about anyone else. This is a purge.
Yeah.
So, like, I asked all these questions near the beginning to establish good faith. They completely threw it out the window. You can listen to that for yourself. It's all there. Towards the end, they were getting very angry because I did stand my ground. I was like, if they had brought something and they said, all right, we have these concerns for these reasons, here's what we're backing it up from, here's the original source and whatever else, things that would be like respectable to me and anyone else that you'd be accusing, this would have gone much differently.
As it should, yeah.
I would
if you are a man of integrity, you will listen to criticism and consider the words of others if they're well-based.
Right.
Let me talk for a second about this principles versus personality thing, because a lot of people would look at you and say, what an ego. Like, they clearly don't want him there. He's refusing to go along with them. He's this libertarian doing things his own way. He's going to compromise a whole institution for his ego. And that would be a very uncharitable. If I were in your shoes, I would not deny I do have some ego invested in this. Probably you're a 20-year-old young man. I mean, I'm still like that at 38, and I was so much worse at 20. But even so, there's this ephemeral value, which is the integrity of an institution, the integrity of a movement of people. And if the Lutheran movement is going to mean anything, then the way it handles these stressors very much matters.
Right.
And so you're just a layperson. You're just an intelligent layperson with convictions and principles that's showing a mirror to the institution for what it is. And it's not necessarily a selfish thing for you to say, no, I'm not going to let y'all do this. I'm not going to go along with it. Y'all are going to have to do your homework. Y'all are going to have to scrutinize these things and question these things. I'm not going to make this easy for you. And to a certain point, it doesn't have to be about you at all. It's just about the principle of the thing. And that's what has been so disheartening for me in my United Methodist Church is how few people are willing to gum up the works for the sake of principle. They're just so interpersonally affected by these dynamics that they get out as soon as they can. They just react defensively. They don't even care about the integrity of the process or the church. They just selfishly go, I didn't sign up for this, I'm out. So it's really cool that you've done what you've done and you've had the energy for it, and you've got your YouTube channel, you got Twitter, you've done interviews. I discovered you through Jonathan Harris. This is Conversations That Matter. So you've done well to go around and circulate this information as best. I am going to push you. You got to do some long form, something for people that are not Twitter minded. But even so, you've done a lot. So good on you. We can't get into all the specifics that have happened there. But if someone's have you put together a central article?
Okay, so if you want something more for the general public, there was an article that went out probably I think at 11 o'clock last night. From Tablet Magazine, which is...
oh, great. Tablet's awesome.
Tablet is good. And it was I've been accused of being an anti-Semite and all this other stuff. It was a very well-written piece, very even-keeled.
Well, and Tablet's Jewish, isn't it?
Tablet is Jewish. The writer, I believe, might have been. I can't quite remember. But I met the writer when I was in Chicago. Very nice lady. Very nice write-up of this whole thing. And it's a little bit online here and there.
Sure.
But it's very much in like a... All right, I'm an outsider from the perspective of the author. I'm an outsider. I have no clue what's going on here. Let's just look into this. She ties in a bunch of other things going on as well, like the FBI had a detail that was specifically targeting traditional Catholics recently. That might have heard of that.
Yeah, I didn't hear of that, but I knew that, traditional Catholics are getting the crunch.
Right, yeah. So
not just from within the church as well. It's really, yeah.
But also the FBI. So, like, she was throwing in all these details where it's like, so we have a church here that was trying to go after, like, at the time, a 19-year-old.
Well, heck, it was, 10 years ago? It was during the Obama administration whenever it was exposed that the IRS was going after right-leaning institutions.
And still are. Like, that never stopped, really.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this is overt ideological interference from top-down authority institution structures.
Right, it's censorship and curtailing of political opponents.
There it is, okay.
So, that was a very good artitle. It was
so,
on Tablet.
we need to have the link to the Tablet article in the show notes.
I can get that to you immediately after this.
Great, yeah.
I'm looking at it right
Oh,
now.
cool. He's on. TJ's found it.
So,
okay, great. So if you want to know more about LCMS and what's happened with Mr. Turnipseed here, there was no way for us. I mean, we're already over an hour and 15 minutes, so there's no way for us to do that. But you can do that on your own. And the reason, once again, that I wanted to host you, I'm not necessarily wanting to mess with the LCMS. I am wanting to mess with an ideology that's hostile and taking over and has ruined and compromised so many institutions that we need. I don't think we can do well without institutions. I think we need institutions.
They're natural.
The institutions are natural. Yeah, like hierarchy.
Right, exactly.
So we need these things, but if we're not willing to fight for them, then we have no right to expect that they're going to do well or serve us as they ought. So that's the role you're serving. We need to end with where are things now with you.
Just before I'll get there very quickly, but on that point about this thing that's infecting all the institutions.
Yes.
That was a very big realization, especially for the Lutherans, because before this, a bunch of the more conservative Lutherans were very insular. They thought that, all right, the sort of lefty, moderate Lutherans in the LCMS might be bad, but the Calvinists are worse because they get this one thing wrong that is like sacraments or something like that.
Yeah, Calvinists really are the bogeyman
of everyone. Yeah,
So
that was kind of how they were before all this. There's been a striking realization now, and for the better, I would say, that a conservative, like an actual conservative Lutheran, has much more in common with an actual conservative Methodist than they do with a moderate or lefty Lutheran that's pushing all of this. Same with a conservative Calvinist, conservative Anglican, Catholic, whatever else. That you and I have much more in common, being just like traditional in our traditions.
Yeah. We have legit disagreements where we're a part of the same Christianity. We have the same basic truth with a capital T.
Right.
Let's get back to the good old days where we were fighting each other over the legit theology. When we're all poisoned from this otherworldly ideology that uses our lexicon but means opposite things, that's it's just a miserable place in history where we are.
It is, and so I've advocated quite a lot. If you go back a few years ago, I would be sort of in that sort of insular, pig-headed Lutheranism where it was our guys or nothing. I've very much changed tune. It's a very much a worthwhile investment to make sure that the traditional conservative, the actual Christians in a different tradition, win out. I would much rather have a community full of traditional, actual Presbyterians, Methodists, Baptists, and whoever else than I would having them have a community full of these sort of Antifa Lutheran types that will purge you at the drop of a hat. Apparently, it's because one of these groups acts as Christians, the other ones will purge you for political gain and all these other things, which is very clearly just unchristian in action. So,
well, and someone sympathetic to that would go, conservative Christians are the purgers. And to which we would say that's the iron law of woke projection.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, we don't have to go further down that road unless you want to.
Anyone that thinks that conservatives are doing the purging just has not taken a look at what's happening and who's getting kicked out. I don't think lefties are getting purged from all these denominations for being leftists anymore. In fact, usually it's a sign of respectability if you just show the international community, look at how many diverse left-wing opinions that we have that we're putting in our books. It's quite the opposite now. The conservatives are getting purged, and everyone else has the prestige. So it is absolutely projection. So just to put a point on that, I and everyone else should be supporting these people that are on side in the struggle across denominations. That's not to say we all need to agree on everything. You and I would have disagreements on doctrine, I'm sure, but you and I have much more in common than Antifa.
Yeah,
so
we have shared values and presuppositions that we can count on, and a shared lexicon where we actually mean the same stuff.
Exactly.
We don't share that with folks on the left.
And then to top that all off, where I am right now. So after that whole meeting ended, they walked out in anger. I had a fist slammed at the table at me, which was on recording. Very, very friendly conversation that they were supposed to carry out.
They're trying to care for you, Brian.
Right, yeah.
And care looks like that, buddy.
And that's basically what they told me afterwards. And I published this in that thread as well, in the collection of documents and videos, was I have a friend in St. Louis who's a psychologist, a trained psychologist, and I showed them the message that I got in there, like, this is just classical manipulation. I don't know what more you want me to say. And I was like, well, okay. So we had this meeting. There was a sort of manipulative ending to it.
Yeah.
And then they go back to the church after a few weeks, and the guy gives a summary, the pastor gives a summary of this meeting that just does not match anything that happened by the recording. And I didn't publish these recordings. Once again, this was like a security.
Yeah.
So I wasn't taking these recordings just to show everyone how wrong everyone else is. So I was reading through his summary of this whole thing, and I was listening back to the recording, and I'm like, that's not at all what happened. And I told that to my dad, and so he wrote one of his letters where he just goes through the summary that the pastor gave, basically sentence by sentence, and just dismantles it from what happened. That didn't sit well with the board of elders or the pastor. The board of elders start to conglomerate with the pastor at this point in time, and they start deliberating putting me under what's called the minor ban. In Lutheranism, that's a fancy word. Basically, it just means the pastor's you're not kicked out, but the pastor's not going to commune you because he has some worries about you, is the summary on that. Which can be used if
that's practical excommunication.
Practical, but there's a proper use for it.
Okay.
So if you find a couple is fornicating or something, you would put them under the minor ban until they married.
Oh, okay, sure.
Things like that.
Yeah.
So they're still in the congregation. They're just not in. They're communing. Not doing. Yeah, they're not communing. So, I was placed under that eventually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's where I am right now. It's basically the step immediately before excommunication. I don't intend to back down on the things that I've said, just because no one's shown me how they're wrong. I haven't even encountered a counter argument to me to show here's where I've erred, to say, all right, I've erred and I believe in this now.
Yeah.
So I'm not really going to back down after so pitiful of an instruction.
Hypothetically, if they actually did do their due diligence, they provided you in print with things that you had said and that were problematic, you would be willing, if you agreed, that this does not conform to a Christian virtue, you would be willing to repent and
Right,
recant.
yeah. So if they like prove to me, proved that I've done wrong, I would say, fine, I did wrong here. I recant it. We can move on.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened because they are demanding that I renounce these people's persons.
As evil.
As evil, which is still not really a Christian. I can't. I've read a lot in the last few years. When I converted to Lutheranism as a sophomore, I immediately started going to Christian history just because, for better or worse, Baptists don't tend to teach you that stuff. Yeah. So I was reading through all these older Christians. I don't think I came across that phrase once in any of the people that I read. So I don't really think that this is a good faith and organic response to me doing something wrong. I think probably what's happened is they saw the letter come down from the president, maybe were strong-armed behind the scenes, speculation, can't prove that, just a guess on my part. They were probably strong-armed behind the scenes and told to get rid of me, and this is probably what's happened.
Yeah.
So I don't intend to give in to that. It's almost insulting how they've gone about this, and this might be where the ego shines through. So they haven't even dignified me by providing a proper response to things that have happened. They haven't given me counter arguments or stuff. They expected me to just fold over.
Yeah, they did.
Which
They're
kind
the
of
ones
insults
that
me.
are in charge. You're supposed to be silent and ashamed and afraid, and let them do with you as they want.
Right, and on that note as well, after the fact, when they were sort of summarizing this event to the parishioners and the elders and whoever else was in on this meeting, but I wasn't because I'm not an elder, they came up with a charge after the fact that I was in error, I was in sin, because I was teaching theology while not being an ordained pastor.
Y'all can't teach theology when you're not ordained?
Well, once upon a time you could, and it was until a few months ago, apparently. What had happened is
that's crazy.
It's a crazy...
Wait, you guys confess the priesthood of all believers.
We do. So you might see the contradiction here.
That's crazy.
And that they're false, is what happened. They took a few quotes out of context. So in that confessional documents that we talked about at the beginning, there's a line that's saying, concerning the church, the only people who can teach and administer sacraments are pastors. What that means is the only people who can preach and administer sacraments for a service for the church is the pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very basic statement there.
Yeah, United Methodists are the same.
Yeah, they took that to mean that only pastors can teach at all, to try to find a place in which I had erred.
That's bonkers, dude.
I
hope you've misunderstood things. That's just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, and it's not that I've misunderstood things, because I asked them and pressed them on this twice, and this is in that thread. It was in an email.
Do y'all have a judiciary that you would
Nope.
no? So
it's
they
all
can just
congregational.
Okay.
For better or worse.
And your pastor has made it clear that he's not on your side. He's not your advocate, right?
I mean, he'll say he is, but then he'll do stuff like this where he's saying you're in sin because you're teaching people without being ordained, which is apparently a requirement as of March or April of 2023.
Is he going to fire all his church's Sunday school teachers?
I was tempted to ask him if he was going to throw out half our confessions because they were written by people that weren't ordained.
Yeah.
The Augsburg Confession was written by a guy called Philip Melanchthon. Was not
I didn't know Melanchthon wasn't ordained.
No, he wasn't. Okay. Not in his entire life. So I don't know what that says, that the proof for saying that I'm sinning by teaching was written by a guy who was not ordained and teaching. So
so within the Twitter sphere, you've got all kinds of support and YouTube.
Well, and real life as well. So
well, that's my concern. There's no reason why it should have gone this far. They should have backed off a long time ago. As soon as they realized that they were using an Antifa document as their sole source of evidence against me, that should have been the red flag in their minds that maybe this isn't the right thing to do, but they kept on anyways, and they've still continued. Yeah. So is there any do you think that they're just going to follow the process through and excommunicate you and do what they want, or do you think that there is any world in which public pressure can shame them into recanting and backing off?
I don't actually know the answer to that, and I would... I do a bunch of other things as well. This pen right here, my friends and I are founding a fraternal organization. So I've been out of state off and on for the last 5 weeks or so, meeting with these people.
In an undergrad program, aren't you?
Yeah, but that's in Stillwater. That's at OSU. So.
Oh, okay. I thought that was up north.
That was for the fraternal organization that I'm founding with my friends. So I haven't been able to go to church. This was planned before any of this took off. This was a plan from last fall. Mm-hmm. So this happening or not, I was going to be gone for this like 5 week period or so. I haven't been back to see what they plan on doing. I haven't heard anything from them directly. I got a text message a few days ago from a congregant, basically just saying, "We heard why you haven't been showing up to church." And I said, "Oh, so you were told about the fact that I'm founding a fraternal organization with my friends?" And they were kind of like, "No, we were told you weren't showing up because of online stuff." And I was like, "Well, you were told wrong, so maybe that should tell you about some of the other things you were told." So it sounds like rumors are just being spread about me.
Yeah, controlling information is unfortunately, I mean, it's just the name of the game.
Yeah.
And that's what's so frustrating. We would like to think that personal righteousness counts for something.
Right.
And we live at a point in history where it really doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, that kind of stinks, but it's also, you know, when you have Ravi Zacharias being such a public, great interlocutor for Christianity and then being exposed after he died, we've just kind of learned there isn't anyone that you can trust. There is no one who's beyond reproach. So the only option really is to do the research and get into the nitty gritty. And when you have an entire populace that has just had things spoon-fed to them for forever, it's really hard for them to learn to actually use those muscles. So God help us. God help the LCMS. I've been publicly critiquing the United Methodist Church, not to just be mean-spirited, but I hope they really can get it together. I got clear because my churches were going to get harmed if I spoke out publicly, so we got clear. But I'm hoping that these institutions can turn around and reclaim their heritage and reclaim some integrity. I hope that for the LCMS, man. And long term, I would love if there was some kind of ecumenical combining of our tribes, just going, "Hey, we saw how things can fall apart. Let's come together. Let's figure things out." That's way down the road. But for right now, we just got to get clear on where the threat is. And
right, and on the fine point that I might disagree due to my Lutheranism, but we can both at least still agree that we have a much bigger enemy. We have more in common, you and I, across these denominational bounds, just as Christians, than the people who apparently just have no honor at all and will spread rumors about you if you leave the state for too long, apparently. So,
well, we need bold people. Through starting this, I get to interview bold people all the time. We just need more bold people. So if you've enjoyed hearing Ryan talk, I hope he's encouraged you. I hope he's given you some courage for whatever. If you are in the midst of a corrupt institution, maybe you have a role to play. But we've talked long enough. We're going to cut this one off. We'll put links in the show notes how you can support and connect with Ryan and what he's about. And whether you're Lutheran or Methodist or some other ungodly faction, we'll just pray for our institutions and try and be salt and light in the midst of a very bland and dank and dark world. So keep shining like stars. I'll see you later.